Maya Chen pressed her face against the observation deck window of the research station, watching the twin suns set over the crystalline desert of Kepler 442c. The landscape stretched endlessly in shades of amber and gold, broken only by towering spires of natural glass that caught and reflected the dying light. At 17, she was the youngest person ever assigned to an interstellar research mission, her expertise in xenobiology having earned her a place among the galaxy's finest scientists. The station hummed quietly around her, processing atmospheric data and soil samples from this remote world on the edge of known space. Maya had been here for 3 months, cataloging the planet's unique mineral formations and searching for signs of ancient life. The world seemed barren, beautiful but empty, with no trace of current inhabitants. A sound broke through her thoughts, something between a wheeze and a moan, carried on the thin evening air. Maya frowned, pressing her ear closer to the reinforced glass. The station's sensors hadn't detected any large life forms in the area. The noise came again, weaker this time, filled with an unmistakable note of suffering. Without hesitation, Maya grabbed her environmental suit and headed for the airlock. Dr. Richardson, the mission's lead scientist, had forbidden solo excursions, but something about that sound compelled her forward. The automated systems tried to warn her about safety protocols, but she overrode them with her security clearance. The planet's surface was cooler in the evening, though still warm enough that her suit's cooling systems kicked in immediately. The thin atmosphere made every step feel lighter than on Earth, and Maya bounded across the crystalline sand toward the source of the sound. It came again, definitely closer now, from behind a cluster of glass formations about 200 meters from the station. As Maya rounded the towering crystals, she stopped dead in her tracks. Before her lay a creature that defied every classification she'd studied. It was enormous, easily 30 meters from nose to tail, with scales that shifted color like oil on water. Its body was serpentine but powerful, with 4 legs ending in claws that had carved deep grooves in the crystal sand. Massive wings, torn and tattered, lay folded against its sides. A dragon, an honest-to-goodness alien dragon, but this magnificent creature was dying. Its scales, which should have been vibrant and shifting, were dull and cracked. Its breathing came in labored gasps, and its great golden eyes were dimmed with exhaustion. Most telling of all, its massive head rested on the sand, too weak to lift itself. Maya approached slowly, her heart pounding. The dragon's eyes tracked her movement, but it made no aggressive moves. Instead, it made that sound again, a pitiful, desperate noise that cut straight to her heart. As she drew closer, she could see the creature's condition more clearly. Its scales weren't just dull. They were flaking away in places, revealing raw, cracked skin beneath. Its tongue hung from its mouth, swollen and black. The dragon was dying of thirst. Maya knelt just outside what she estimated was the creature's reach, though it seemed too weak to pose any threat. "Hey there," she said softly, her voice carrying through the suit's external speakers. "You're not doing too well, are you?" The dragon's great eye fixed on her, and Maya could swear she saw intelligence there. Deep ancient wisdom combined with desperate hope. The creature tried to lift its head, failed, and instead moved its mouth in what looked almost like speech. No sound came out except that terrible dry wheeze. Maya's mind raced. Every protocol she'd learned screamed at her to return to the station immediately and contact Earth for instructions. This was first contact with an intelligent alien species, possibly the most important moment in human history. But looking at the creature's suffering, she couldn't bring herself to leave. She activated her suit's communication system and tried to patch through to Dr. Richardson, but the crystalline formations were interfering with the signal. She was on her own. The dragon made another attempt to speak, its mouth moving in deliberate patterns. Maya watched carefully and slowly began to understand. The creature was miming the act of drinking, its movements becoming more frantic as Maya showed signs of comprehension. "Water," Maya breathed. "You need water." The dragon's eye brightened slightly and it managed a small nod. The simple gesture hit Maya like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just an animal. This was a person, a thinking, feeling being who was slowly dying of thirst on this desert world. Maya looked back at the research station, its lights beginning to twinkle in the growing darkness. She had water. The station had recycling systems that could provide more than enough for her needs. But how much would a creature this size need? And more importantly, could she trust it? The dragon seemed to sense her hesitation. With what appeared to be enormous effort, it extended one massive claw and gently touched the sand near Maya's feet. Not threatening, not grasping, just a gentle touch like a plea. Maya made her decision. She stood up and began walking back toward the station, speaking over her shoulder. "I'll be right back," she called. "Don't go anywhere." Behind her, she heard a sound that might have been alien laughter, dry and rasping, but unmistakably expressing something like hope. As Maya hurried across the crystal sand, her mind was already working on the logistics. She had portable water containers in her lab, designed for field research. It wouldn't be much compared to the dragon's size, but it would be a start. More importantly, it would show the creature that she intended to help. She paused at the station's airlock, looking back at the cluster of crystals where the dragon lay hidden. The implications of what she was about to do crashed over her all at once. This would change everything: human understanding of the universe, protocols for alien contact, possibly the course of history itself. But right now, all that mattered was that someone was dying of thirst, and Maya had water to share. She cycled through the airlock and began gathering supplies, her hands shaking with excitement and fear. Behind her, carried on the thin air, came that pleading sound once more, weaker now but still holding on to hope. Maya returned to the dragon carrying 2 large containers of water, each holding 5 liters. It wasn't much for a creature of such immense size, but it was all she could safely carry across the uneven crystal terrain. The dragon's great eye tracked her approach, and she could see the desperate hope burning brighter as it caught sight of the containers. "Okay, big guy," Maya said, kneeling at what she hoped was a safe distance. "I've got water, but I need to know you won't hurt me when you feel better." The dragon's response surprised her. It laboriously lifted one massive claw and placed it over its heart, or where Maya assumed its heart might be. Then it gestured toward her with the same claw, palm open in what looked remarkably like a universal gesture of peaceful intent. Maya unscrewed the first container and held it up. "I'm going to come closer now, okay?" The dragon nodded weakly and lowered its great head to the sand, positioning its mouth so that Maya could approach safely. As she drew near, Maya could see just how severe the creature's dehydration had become. Its scales weren't just cracked, they were curling at the edges like dried leaves. The skin around its eyes was sunken, and its massive tongue was swollen and split. Carefully, Maya tilted the first container and let the water flow into the dragon's mouth. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The creature's eyes rolled back in relief, and it swallowed greedily, careful not to move its head and risk startling Maya away. When the first container was empty, Maya quickly opened the second. As the dragon drank, something extraordinary happened. The water seemed to revitalize it beyond what should have been possible. The cracks in its scales began to close, and their color started to return. Not fully, but enough to show glimpses of the magnificent creature it had been. Most remarkably, as its throat became less parched, the dragon began to speak. The words came out as a whisper at first, in a language Maya had never heard but somehow understood. The dragon's meaning seemed to flow directly into her mind, bypassing the need for translation. "Thank you, small one," the dragon said, its voice like distant thunder. I had begun to believe that hope itself had died. Maya sat back on her heels, amazed. "You can speak? I mean, I can understand you?" "We are Zephyrians," the dragon explained, its voice growing slightly stronger. "Our kind possesses what you might call telepathic resonance. I project meaning, and your mind interprets it in concepts you understand. It is not true telepathy. I cannot read your thoughts, but it allows basic communication across species barriers." "Zephyrians," Maya repeated. "I've never heard of your species. Our databases don't have any record of dragons. I mean, of beings like you." A profound sadness entered the dragon's great eyes. "There are reasons for that, child. My name is Korath Windweaver, and I am likely the last of my kind to fly among the stars." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "The last? What happened to your people?" Korath's head sank lower. Though whether from weakness or grief, Maya couldn't tell. "We were an ancient species when your kind first looked up at the stars. We had built a civilization that spanned dozens of worlds, living in harmony with the cosmos for millennia. We were explorers, philosophers, guardians of knowledge. Our greatest achievement was not technology or conquest, but understanding." The dragon paused, gathering strength to continue. We had learned to live without depleting our worlds, to travel between stars without scarring space itself. We thought ourselves wise. We thought ourselves safe. What changed? Maya asked gently. The consuming void, Korath whispered, and Maya felt an echo of primordial terror in the words. A force from beyond the galactic rim. Not a species, not a fleet, but something hungrier. It devoured everything in its path. Planets, stars, entire solar systems. It consumed matter, energy, even information itself, leaving nothing but empty space behind. Maya's hands clenched around the empty water containers. Your people fought it? We tried. For 3 centuries, we fought a retreating battle across the galaxy. One by one, our worlds fell. Our greatest warriors, our most powerful ships, our most brilliant minds, all consumed by the void. In the end, only a few dozen of us remained, scattered across the furthest edges of space. The dragon's voice grew weaker as he continued. We made a desperate plan. Each of us would travel to a different region of the galaxy, as far from the void as possible, and go into deep hibernation. We hoped that the consuming void would eventually move on, seek prey in other galaxies, and we could emerge to rebuild. But something went wrong, Maya guessed. My hibernation chamber malfunctioned, Korath confirmed. What should have been a few centuries of sleep became over 2 millennia. When I finally awakened, I was alone on a dead world, and my ship's life support systems had failed. I had no choice but to travel from world to world, seeking water, seeking life, seeking any trace of my people. The dragon's massive form seemed to shrink into itself. For 500 years I have searched. I have found the remnants of our civilization, empty cities, abandoned ships, monuments to the dead, but no living Zephyrians. The others must have awakened centuries ago and either died or moved on to regions of space I cannot reach. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. That's horrible. 500 years alone. The worst part, Korath said, his voice barely audible, was the thirst. We Zephyrians have a unique physiology. We require vast quantities of pure water not just to survive, but to maintain our ability to fly between worlds. As I grew more dehydrated, my powers weakened. Eventually, I could no longer generate the energy fields necessary for interstellar travel. I became trapped in this system, too weak to leave, slowly dying. Maya looked around at the crystal desert surrounding them. How long have you been here? 47 of your years, Korath replied. I crashed on this world when my ship finally gave out. I have survived by extracting what little moisture I could from the morning dew that condenses on these crystal formations. It was never enough, barely sufficient to keep me alive, but not enough to restore my strength. The dragon's eye fixed on Maya with an intensity that made her breath catch. When I sensed your ship arriving, I thought perhaps I was finally dying and beginning to hallucinate. No intelligent species had visited this system in all the time I have been here. But when you approached, when I smelled the water you carry, I dared to hope. Maya stood up, her mind racing. How much water would you need? To be fully healthy again, I mean. More than you could possibly provide, small one. A Zephyrian of my size requires approximately 50,000 liters to return to full strength. Your research station, though I am grateful for any aid, cannot produce such quantities. Maya's heart sank. 50,000 liters was far beyond anything the research station could provide. But as she looked at this ancient, noble being who had suffered alone for so long, she felt something stirring inside her. The same stubborn determination that had made her the youngest xenobiologist in human history. Maybe not, she said slowly. But humans are pretty good at solving impossible problems. Korath's eye widened slightly. Humans? That is your species name? That's right. And we're going to figure out how to save you, Korath Windweaver. I promise. For the first time in perhaps centuries, something that might have been a smile crossed the dragon's massive features. I think, Maya Chen of the humans, that meeting you may be the first good fortune I have known in a very long time. Maya spent the night beside Korath, sharing her emergency rations and talking about everything and nothing. The dragon seemed fascinated by human culture, asking endless questions about Earth, about humanity's brief but explosive expansion into space, about their art and music and dreams. In return, he shared stories of the ancient Zephyrian civilization, cities that floated among the clouds, symphonies played with controlled weather patterns, libraries containing the collected wisdom of 1,000 worlds. As the twin suns rose, painting the crystal desert in brilliant shades of rose and gold. Maya knew she couldn't put off the inevitable any longer. She needed to contact the research station and explain what had happened. "I have to go back and talk to my team," she told Korath, who had regained enough strength to lift his head and was looking considerably less like death. "They're going to want to follow protocols for first contact, but I'll make sure they understand that you're dying and need immediate help." Korath nodded gravely. "I understand the complexities of interspecies relations, young Maya. Do what you must. I have waited 5 centuries. I can wait a little longer." Maya gathered her empty water containers and headed back to the station. Her heart pounded as she cycled through the airlock, knowing that her life, and possibly human history, was about to change forever. Dr. Richardson was waiting for her in the main lab, his face grim. "Maya, where have you been? Your suit's tracker showed you left the station last night without authorization. We were about to send a search team." Maya took a deep breath. "Dr. Richardson, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound impossible, but it's true, and we need to act quickly." For the next 30 minutes, Maya explained everything: the dragon, the conversation, the desperate need for water. Dr. Richardson's expression shifted from anger to disbelief, to scientific excitement, to bureaucratic panic in rapid succession. "Maya, do you understand what you've done?" he said, running his hands through his graying hair. "This is first contact. There are protocols, procedures, entire departments back on Earth that handle this sort of thing. We're supposed to observe from a distance, document everything, and wait for the diplomatic corps to arrive." "Dr. Richardson, he's dying," Maya said firmly. "While we're following protocols, Korath Windweaver, the last member of an ancient civilization, is going to die of thirst." Is that really what humanity wants its first act in galactic diplomacy to be? Standing by and watching someone die because we were too worried about paperwork? The older scientist was quiet for a moment, staring out at the crystal formations where Maya had spent the night. Finally, he sighed. "Show me," he said. Maya led Dr. Richardson and the other 2 team members, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a geologist, and Dr. James Okafor, an atmospheric specialist, across the desert to where Korath waited. The dragon had used the morning hours to restore some of his dignity, arranging himself in a more regal pose despite his weakness. The team's reaction was everything Maya had expected and more. Dr. Tanaka actually fainted. Dr. Okafor dropped his scanner and stood frozen, mouth agape. Dr. Richardson, to his credit, maintained his composure and approached slowly with his hands raised in the same peaceful gesture Maya had used. "Greetings, Korath Windweaver," he said formally. "I am Dr. Richardson, leader of this research expedition. Maya has told us of your situation, and we wish to help if we can." Korath's mental voice reached all of them now, warm with amusement. "I am honored to meet you, Dr. Richardson. Your young colleague has already shown me more kindness than I have experienced in centuries. I understand the complexity of what my presence means for your species, but I assure you, I wish only to survive long enough to complete my search for my people." Over the next several hours, the team documented everything: Korath's story, his physiology, his technological knowledge, his understanding of the galaxy beyond human space. It quickly became clear that the dragon wasn't just a refugee. He was a living repository of advanced scientific knowledge that could accelerate human development by centuries. But the more they learned, the more daunting the challenge became. 50,000 liters of water was far beyond their capacity. The research station's recycling systems could produce perhaps 100 liters per day at maximum efficiency, and they needed those for their own survival. What about the ice deposits at the polar regions? Dr. Tanaka suggested during their emergency strategy session. The orbital scans showed substantial formations. "Too far," Dr. Okafor replied, studying his atmospheric data. "Our transport vehicles don't have the range, and even if they did, we don't have the equipment to extract and transport that much ice." "Could we call for supply ships from Earth?" Dr. Richardson asked. Maya shook her head. "The nearest supply mission isn't scheduled for 8 months. Korath doesn't have that long. Even with the water we've given him, he's still critically dehydrated. A few more days, maybe a week at most." The team fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. The enormity of the situation was overwhelming. They had made first contact with an alien species, discovered a being of incredible knowledge and wisdom, and they were going to have to watch him die because they couldn't solve a simple logistical problem. Maya stared out at the crystal desert, her mind churning. There had to be a solution. Humans hadn't become a spacefaring species by giving up when problems seemed impossible. They had figured out faster-than-light travel, terraforming artificial gravity. Surely they could figure out how to get water to someone who needed it. What about the crystals themselves? She said suddenly. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her geological samples. What about them? Korath said he's been surviving on moisture from morning dew that condenses on the crystal formations. That means there's water in the atmosphere. Not much, but some. What if we could extract it more efficiently? Dr. Okafor frowned. The atmospheric water content here is less than 0.02%. Even if we had perfect extraction efficiency, which is impossible, we'd need to process millions of cubic meters of air. But what if we didn't need perfect efficiency? Maya said, her excitement growing. What if we just needed to be clever about it? She pulled up the geological surveys on her tablet. These crystal formations aren't just random. They form specific patterns, creating natural air currents as the temperature changes between day and night. The dew doesn't just appear randomly. It follows predictable patterns based on wind flow and temperature gradients. Dr. Tanaka leaned forward, interested now. You're thinking of using the crystals as a natural condensation system? Exactly. But we enhance it. We don't just wait for natural dew formation. We create artificial temperature differentials, set up condensation surfaces, maybe even use some of our equipment to accelerate the process. Dr. Richardson looked skeptical. Maya, even if that worked, it would still take enormous amounts of time and energy to extract 50,000 liters. Then we don't try to extract 50,000 liters, Maya said with a grin. We get creative. She turned to Korath, who had been listening to their discussion with growing interest. You said you need 50,000 liters to return to full strength. But how much would you need just to survive comfortably? To not be in constant pain from dehydration? The dragon considered this. Perhaps 10,000 liters would restore me to basic health. Not enough to regain my powers, but sufficient to live without suffering. And how much to regain some of your abilities? Maybe not full interstellar flight, but enough to help us help you. 20,000 liters might allow me to access some of my species' biotechnology. We Zephyrians have natural abilities that your equipment cannot match. I could enhance your water extraction efforts considerably. Maya turned back to her teammates with a triumphant smile. There's our solution. We don't need to get all the water at once. We start small, get Korath healthy enough to help us, then he helps us get more water, which makes him stronger, which lets him help even more. It's a positive feedback loop. Dr. Richardson stared at her for a long moment, then began to smile. Maya, that's actually brilliant. A staged recovery process with increasing returns as his condition improves. But it's still a massive undertaking, Dr. Okafor warned. Even 10,000 liters using atmospheric extraction would require weeks of constant work. Maya looked around at her team, tired scientists on a remote world, equipped with basic research tools facing an impossible task. Then she looked at Korath, ancient and wise and dying, whose knowledge could transform human understanding of the universe. Then we'd better get started, she said. The next 3 days were a blur of constant activity. The research team worked in rotating shifts, setting up their improvised water extraction system among the crystal formations. Maya had been right about the natural air currents. The crystals created complex patterns of airflow that could be harnessed with careful positioning of condensation. Surfaces. Dr. Okafor had rigged together a network of cooling units salvaged from their equipment, creating artificial temperature differentials that dramatically increased dew formation. Dr. Tanaka mapped the most efficient crystal arrangements, identifying natural collection points where water would accumulate. Dr. Richardson coordinated their efforts, while maintaining detailed documentation of everything for the inevitable reports to Earth. But it was Maya who made the breakthrough. That changed everything. On the 4th morning, as she brought Korath his daily ration of collected water, now up to nearly 20 liters per day thanks to their improved system, she noticed something unusual about the dragon's scales. In the growing sunlight, they weren't just changing color. They were actually moving, shifting position like tiny solar panels tracking the sun. Korath, she said, settling cross-legged beside his massive head. "Can I ask you something about Zephyrian biology?" "Of course, young Maya. I am happy to share knowledge with one who has shown me such kindness. Your scales, they're not just decorative, are they? They serve a specific function." Korath's great eye focused on her with interest. "You are very observant. Yes, our scales are far more than mere armor. They are sophisticated organs that serve multiple purposes. They regulate temperature, process solar radiation for energy, and most importantly for our current situation, they extract moisture from the air." Maya nearly dropped her water container. "They what?" "Every scale on my body is capable of condensing water vapor from the atmosphere and channeling it to internal storage organs. In a properly hydrated Zephyrian, the scales work constantly, ensuring we never suffer from thirst regardless of environmental conditions." "But yours aren't working now?" Korath's mental voice carried a note of sadness. "When we become severely dehydrated, the scales begin to shut down to conserve energy. They curl inward, becoming hard and brittle, losing their ability to collect moisture. It is a death spiral. The more dehydrated we become, the less able we are to extract water from our environment, leading to further dehydration." Maya's mind raced with possibilities. What would it take to reactivate them? Even partially? Sufficient hydration to restore basic cellular function, combined with specific mineral nutrients that your simple water lacks. We require trace amounts of various elements to maintain scale flexibility and conductivity. Maya was already pulling out her tablet, accessing the station's mineral analysis data. "What kind of elements?" "We have detailed breakdowns of the soil composition here." Korath described the complex mixture of minerals his species required, some common, others exotic. Maya cross-referenced his requirements with their geological surveys, her excitement mounting. "Korath, this planet is practically a pharmacy for your species. Look at these readings. The crystal formations aren't just silicon dioxide. They're riddled with exactly the trace minerals you need. The reason you've survived here as long as you have isn't just because of the dew. It's because this world has the right geological composition to keep you barely functional." She stood up, pacing excitedly. "If we can create a mineral solution with the right concentrations and get enough of it into your system, we might be able to reactivate your scales. And if your scales start working again, I could begin extracting water from the atmosphere on my own." Korath finished, understanding immediately. The process would accelerate as I became healthier, until I could sustain myself without external help. Maya ran back to the research station, her mind buzzing with calculations. She found Dr. Tanaka in the lab analyzing crystal samples. "Yuki, I need you to help me create a specific mineral solution," Maya said breathlessly, explaining Korath's requirements. Dr. Tanaka listened intently, then nodded slowly. "It's possible. We have the equipment to extract and concentrate these minerals from the crystal formations. But Maya, we're talking about industrial-scale mining and processing. Our equipment isn't designed for that kind of operation." "Then we modify it," Maya said firmly. "We're researchers. We're supposed to be creative." Over the next 2 days, the research station was transformed into a makeshift mineral extraction facility. They repurposed drilling equipment into mining tools, converted atmospheric processors into chemical refineries, and turned their sample analysis lab into a production center. It was improvised, inefficient, and probably violated a dozen safety protocols, but it worked. The first batch of mineral-enriched water was ready on the 6th day of their rescue operation. Maya carried it to Korath personally, along with their usual collection of atmospheric moisture. "This might sting at first," she warned, as Korath prepared to drink the specially prepared solution. "Dr. Tanaka says the mineral concentration is pretty intense." Korath consumed the mixture slowly, his massive form shuddering slightly as the minerals entered his system. For several minutes nothing seemed to happen. Then gradually Maya began to notice changes. The dragon's scales, which had been dull and curled for so long, began to shift. They straightened slightly, their edges becoming more flexible. Most remarkably, their color began to return, not the vibrant, shifting hues Maya imagined they had once been, but definite improvement from the lifeless gray they had shown before. "How do you feel?" Maya asked. Korath's mental voice carried a note of wonder. "I can feel them awakening. My scales. They have been silent for so long I had almost forgotten what it was like to have them functioning. It is like feeling the wind again after being buried alive. As they watched, the transformation accelerated. The scales nearest Korath's head and neck began to move with purpose, adjusting their angle to catch the morning moisture more efficiently. Tiny droplets of water began to appear along their edges, channeling toward internal collection points. "It's working," Maya breathed. "They're actually collecting water from the air." "Not much yet," Korath admitted, "but more than I have been able to gather in decades. With continued mineral supplementation and time, the effect should spread throughout my body." Dr. Richardson, who had been monitoring the process with his instruments, looked up from his readings. "Korath, our atmospheric sensors are detecting something unusual. The humidity levels around your body are fluctuating in regular patterns. Are you actually controlling the local weather?" Korath's response carried a hint of pride. "Weather control is one of our species' most basic abilities, though I am far too weak for anything dramatic. What you are observing is microclimate manipulation. I am creating small areas of increased humidity around my scales to improve water extraction efficiency." Maya stared at the dragon with new respect. "You're not just collecting water from the air, you're making the air more humid so there's more water to collect." "Precisely. As my strength returns, I will be able to extend this effect over larger areas, potentially increasing the efficiency of your extraction systems as well." The implications hit Maya like a lightning bolt. "Korath, if you can control humidity, could you help us with our condensation arrays? Maybe create weather patterns that would improve our collection rates?" "Once I am stronger, certainly." "But Maya, there is something else you should know about my abilities. Something that might solve our water problem entirely." Maya leaned forward, intrigued. "We Zephyrians do not merely manipulate existing weather," Korath explained. "We can create it from base atmospheric components. Given sufficient power and the right conditions, I can literally conjure rain from clear skies." The research team exchanged stunned looks. Dr. Okafor was the first to speak. "You mean you could make it rain? Here, on a desert world?" "The process requires enormous energy, which I currently lack," Korath said. "But if we can continue improving my condition, if I can restore more of my scales to function, then yes, I could bring rain to this desert. Enough rain to complete my recovery and perhaps even transform this world's climate permanently." Maya felt a familiar thrill of excitement. They weren't just solving a rescue mission anymore. They were potentially witnessing the birth of a new world. "How much more mineral solution would you need?" she asked. "Perhaps 3 more treatments of increasing concentration should be sufficient to restore basic weather manipulation abilities. After that?" Korath's great eye fixed on the crystalline desert stretching to the horizon. "After that, we shall see what miracles human ingenuity and Zephyrian power can accomplish together." The next 3 days were a blur of constant activity. The research team worked in rotating shifts, setting up their improvised water extraction system among the crystal formations. Maya had been right about the natural air currents. The crystals created complex patterns of airflow that could be harnessed with careful positioning of condensation. Surfaces. Dr. Okafor had rigged together a network of cooling units salvaged from their equipment, creating artificial temperature differentials that dramatically increased dew formation. Dr. Tanaka mapped the most efficient crystal arrangements, identifying natural collection points where water would accumulate. Dr. Richardson coordinated their efforts, while maintaining detailed documentation of everything for the inevitable reports to Earth. But it was Maya who made the breakthrough. That changed everything. On the 4th morning, as she brought Korath his daily ration of collected water, now up to nearly 20 liters per day thanks to their improved system, she noticed something unusual about the dragon's scales. In the growing sunlight, they weren't just changing color. They were actually moving, shifting position like tiny solar panels tracking the sun. "Korath," she said, settling cross-legged beside his massive head, "can I ask you something about Zephyrian biology?" "Of course, young Maya. I am happy to share knowledge with one who has shown me such kindness." "Your scales, they're not just decorative, are they? They serve a specific function." Korath's great eye focused on her with interest. "You are very observant. Yes, our scales are far more than mere armor. They are sophisticated organs that serve multiple purposes. They regulate temperature, process solar radiation for energy, and most importantly for our current situation, they extract moisture from the air." Maya nearly dropped her water container. "They what?" Every scale on my body is capable of condensing water vapor from the atmosphere and channeling it to internal storage organs. In a properly hydrated Zephyrian, the scales work constantly, ensuring we never suffer from thirst regardless of environmental conditions. But yours aren't working now? Korath's mental voice carried a note of sadness. When we become severely dehydrated, the scales begin to shut down to conserve energy. They curl inward, becoming hard and brittle, losing their ability to collect moisture. It is a death spiral. The more dehydrated we become, the less able we are to extract water from our environment, leading to further dehydration. Maya's mind raced with possibilities. What would it take to reactivate them? Even partially? Sufficient hydration to restore basic cellular function, combined with specific mineral nutrients that your simple water lacks. We require trace amounts of various elements to maintain scale flexibility and conductivity. Maya was already pulling out her tablet, accessing the station's mineral analysis data. What kind of elements? We have detailed breakdowns of the soil composition here. Korath described the complex mixture of minerals his species required, some common, others exotic. Maya cross-referenced his requirements with their geological surveys, her excitement mounting. Korath, this planet is practically a pharmacy for your species. Look at these readings. The crystal formations aren't just silicon dioxide. They're riddled with exactly the trace minerals you need. The reason you've survived here as long as you have isn't just because of the dew. It's because this world has the right geological composition to keep you barely functional. She stood up, pacing excitedly. If we can create a mineral solution with the right concentrations and get enough of it into your system, we might be able to reactivate your scales. And if your scales start working again, I could begin extracting water from the atmosphere on my own. Korath finished, understanding immediately. The process would accelerate as I became healthier, until I could sustain myself without external help. Maya ran back to the research station, her mind buzzing with calculations. She found Dr. Tanaka in the lab analyzing crystal samples. "Yuki, I need you to help me create a specific mineral solution," Maya said breathlessly, explaining Korath's requirements. Dr. Tanaka listened intently, then nodded slowly. "It's possible. We have the equipment to extract and concentrate these minerals from the crystal formations. But Maya, we're talking about industrial-scale mining and processing. Our equipment isn't designed for that kind of operation." "Then we modify it," Maya said firmly. "We're researchers. We're supposed to be creative." Over the next 2 days, the research station was transformed into a makeshift mineral extraction facility. They repurposed drilling equipment into mining tools, converted atmospheric processors into chemical refineries, and turned their sample analysis lab into a production center. It was improvised, inefficient, and probably violated a dozen safety protocols, but it worked. The first batch of mineral-enriched water was ready on the 6th day of their rescue operation. Maya carried it to Korath personally, along with their usual collection of atmospheric moisture. "This might sting at first," she warned, as Korath prepared to drink the specially prepared solution. "Dr. Tanaka says the mineral concentration is pretty intense." Korath consumed the mixture slowly, his massive form shuddering slightly as the minerals entered his system. For several minutes nothing seemed to happen. Then gradually Maya began to notice changes. The dragon's scales, which had been dull and curled for so long, began to shift. They straightened slightly, their edges becoming more flexible. Most remarkably, their color began to return, not the vibrant, shifting hues Maya imagined they had once been, but definite improvement from the lifeless gray they had shown before. "How do you feel?" Maya asked. Korath's mental voice carried a note of wonder. "I can feel them awakening. My scales. They have been silent for so long I had almost forgotten what it was like to have them functioning. It is like feeling the wind again after being buried alive." As they watched, the transformation accelerated. The scales nearest Korath's head and neck began to move with purpose, adjusting their angle to catch the morning moisture more efficiently. Tiny droplets of water began to appear along their edges, channeling toward internal collection points. "It's working," Maya breathed. "They're actually collecting water from the air." "Not much yet," Korath admitted, "but more than I have been able to gather in decades. With continued mineral supplementation and time, the effect should spread throughout my body." Dr. Richardson, who had been monitoring the process with his instruments, looked up from his readings. Korath, our atmospheric sensors are detecting something unusual. The humidity levels around your body are fluctuating in regular patterns. Are you actually controlling the local weather? Korath's response carried a hint of pride. Weather control is one of our species' most basic abilities, though I am far too weak for anything dramatic. What you are observing is microclimate manipulation. I am creating small areas of increased humidity around my scales to improve water extraction efficiency. Maya stared at the dragon with new respect. You're not just collecting water from the air, you're making the air more humid so there's more water to collect. Precisely. As my strength returns, I will be able to extend this effect over larger areas, potentially increasing the efficiency of your extraction systems as well. The implications hit Maya like a lightning bolt. Korath, if you can control humidity, could you help us with our condensation arrays? Maybe create weather patterns that would improve our collection rates? Once I am stronger, certainly. But Maya, there is something else you should know about my abilities. Something that might solve our water problem entirely. Maya leaned forward, intrigued. We Zephyrians do not merely manipulate existing weather, Korath explained. We can create it from base atmospheric components. Given sufficient power and the right conditions, I can literally conjure rain from clear skies. The research team exchanged stunned looks. Dr. Okafor was the first to speak. You mean you could make it rain? Here, on a desert world? The process requires enormous energy, which I currently lack, Korath said. But if we can continue improving my condition, if I can restore more of my scales to function, then yes. I could bring rain to this desert. Enough rain to complete my recovery and perhaps even transform this world's climate permanently. Maya felt a familiar thrill of excitement. They weren't just solving a rescue mission anymore. They were potentially witnessing the birth of a new world. How much more mineral solution would you need? She asked. Perhaps 3 more treatments of increasing concentration should be sufficient to restore basic weather manipulation abilities. After that, Korath's great eye fixed on the crystalline desert stretching to the horizon. After that, we shall see what miracles human ingenuity and Zephyrian power can accomplish together. The transformation began at dawn on the 10th day of their mission. Korath, now strong enough to lift his great head without effort, and showing patches of brilliant scale color across his entire body, positioned himself at the center of their planned network. The research team had spent 2 days mapping the optimal connection points between crystal formations, calculating angles and distances with obsessive precision. Maya stood beside the dragon, her heart pounding with anticipation and terror in equal measure. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before, creating a planet-wide energy grid using alien biotechnology and human engineering. Are you ready for this? She asked Korath. The dragon's mental voice carried absolute confidence. I have been ready for centuries, young Maya. The question is whether your equipment can handle what we are about to unleash. Dr. Okafor made final adjustments to their monitoring systems, designed to track energy flows through the crystal network. All sensors are online. The fusion reactors are at full power, and we've got backup systems standing by. Dr. Tanaka had spent the morning placing conductive probes at carefully calculated points around the initial network area. Connection points are ready. We should see measurable piezoelectric activity as soon as the first pathways are complete. Dr. Richardson coordinated from the mobile command center they had set up, ready to document every moment of what would either be humanity's greatest scientific achievement or most spectacular failure. All stations report ready. Korath, Maya, it's your show. Maya nodded to Korath. Start with the nearest formation. Short bursts at first. We need to see how the crystals respond before we commit to the full network. Korath drew in a deep breath, his chest swelling to enormous proportions. When he exhaled, it wasn't the flame of human legends, but something far more magnificent. A focused stream of superheated plasma that glowed like captured starlight. The beam struck the nearest crystal formation with surgical precision, not destroying but reshaping, creating a perfect conductive channel that gleamed like silver, threading through the translucent structure. Maya's tablet immediately lit up with readings. Energy flow detected. The crystal is conducting. We're getting a steady current between formations. Encouraged by this success, Korath began working systematically, his plasma breath carving precise pathways between crystal formations in an expanding pattern. Each new connection added to the network's total energy output, and Maya could see the readings climbing steadily. But the real magic happened when they reached the critical threshold. "Maya," Dr. Okafor called out urgently, "I'm reading massive energy spikes throughout the network. It's like the whole system just woke up." Maya looked at her instruments in amazement. The piezoelectric output wasn't just adding up linearly, it was resonating, creating harmonic frequencies that amplified the total energy beyond anything they had calculated. "It's working exactly like a planetary nervous system," she breathed. "The crystals aren't just conducting electricity, they're communicating with each other, synchronizing their output." Korath paused in his work, his great eye widening as he felt the energy begin to flow into his body. "By the ancient winds, I can feel it. The power is returning to me faster than I dared hope." The dragon's scales began to shift and change at an accelerated rate. Colors that had been dull and lifeless for decades suddenly blazed with vibrant hues. His movements became more fluid, more graceful. And when he spread his tattered wings, Maya could see them beginning to heal, the torn membranes regenerating before her eyes. "How do you feel?" Maya asked. "Alive," Korath replied, his mental voice now carrying undertones of power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "For the first time in centuries, I feel truly alive." Over the next several hours, the network grew exponentially. As Korath regained strength, he could work faster and with greater precision. His plasma breath became more powerful, allowing him to create longer connections across greater distances. Most remarkably, he began to demonstrate abilities the team had never imagined. "Maya, watch this," Korath said, focusing intently on a crystal formation nearly a kilometer away. The crystal began to glow, then shift, extending tendrils of itself across the desert to meet connections from other formations. "I can directly manipulate the crystal growth now, encouraging them to form the connections we need." Dr. Tanaka stared in wonder. "He's literally growing the network." The crystals are extending themselves following his bioelectric guidance. By midday, their local network covered an area of nearly 50 square kilometers, and Korath had regained enough strength to attempt his first flight in decades. Maya watched in awe as the mighty dragon lifted himself from the sand, his wings casting enormous shadows across the crystal formations below. "The view from up here is remarkable." Korath's voice reached them from above. "I can see the natural patterns in the crystal formations across the entire continent." "Maya, your theory was more accurate than you knew. The network structures extend far beyond what we initially mapped. This world is practically designed for what we are attempting, flying at speeds that left the research team's ground vehicles far behind." Korath began connecting distant crystal formations to their growing network. Each new connection exponentially increased the available energy, which in turn made him stronger and faster, allowing him to add even more connections in an ever-accelerating cycle. Dr. Richardson watched the energy readings with growing amazement. "Maya, we've gone from 50 megawatts to over 5,000 megawatts in just 6 hours. At this rate, Maya said, checking her calculations, we'll have planetary coverage by sunset." But even Maya hadn't anticipated what would happen when they reached that threshold. As the last major continental crystal formation came online, the entire planet seemed to hum with energy. The aurora-like lights that had occasionally been visible in the polar regions suddenly blazed across the entire sky, painting the heavens in brilliant sheets of green and gold. The very ground beneath their feet vibrated with harmonic frequencies. Korath landed beside them, and Maya gasped at the transformation. This was no longer a dying refugee, but a being of almost godlike majesty. His scales blazed with colors that shifted through the entire spectrum, his eyes glowed with inner fire, and electricity danced between his claws. "Maya Chen of the humans," Korath said, his mental voice now carrying such power that it seemed to resonate in their bones. "You have given me a gift beyond all calculation. I am not merely restored, I am more powerful than I have ever been in my entire existence." Maya felt a mixture of pride and humble awe. Can you really make it rain now?" Korath's laugh was like the rumble of approaching thunder. "My dear young friend, I can do far more than that." The dragon spread his mighty wings and launched himself into the sky with tremendous force. As he flew higher and higher, the aurora lights seemed to follow him, swirling around his form like living things. Maya and her team watched through their instruments as Korath reached the upper atmosphere and began to dance. There was no other word for it. The dragon soared and spiraled through the thin air, his movements creating patterns of energy that rippled outward across the entire planet. The aurora lights responded to his dance. And gradually, impossibly, clouds began to form, not the thin, wispy clouds that occasionally appeared on this desert world, but massive, heavy storm clouds pregnant with moisture. They gathered at Korath's command, growing larger and darker as he continued his aerial ballet. Maya, Dr. Okafor said in a voice filled with wonder, the atmospheric moisture content just increased by 300% in the last 10 minutes. He's not just making clouds, he's pulling water vapor from the planet's core, from underground reserves we didn't even know existed. The first drops fell 20 minutes later, then more and more until a steady rain was falling across the entire continent. Maya stood in the downpour, her face turned up to the sky, laughing with pure joy as water that hadn't touched this world in geological ages washed over them all. Korath descended through the rain like a living celebration, his scales gleaming wet and brilliant. When he landed, the ancient dragon looked at Maya with an expression of gratitude that transcended species barriers. "You have not merely saved my life, Maya Chen," he said softly. "You have given me the power to create life itself. This world will bloom again, and it will stand as a monument to human ingenuity and kindness for all time." Maya wiped rain from her eyes, grinning widely. "Just wait until you see what we do next," she said. "Humans are just getting started." 6 months after the rain began, Maya stood on the observation deck of the greatly expanded research station, watching the sunrise over a world transformed. Where once there had been endless crystal desert, now there were rolling green hills dotted with lakes and rivers. Korath had not been content with simple rain. He had reshaped the planet's entire climate system, creating weather patterns that would sustain life for millennia to come. The first Earth ships had arrived 3 weeks ago, bringing diplomats, scientists, and journalists eager to document humanity's first successful alien contact. Maya had become something of a celebrity, though she found the attention uncomfortable. What mattered to her was that Korath was alive and healthy, and that their friendship had changed the course of galactic history. "You seem thoughtful this morning." "Young Maya," came the familiar voice in her mind. Maya turned to see Korath approaching across the station's expanded landing platform. The dragon was magnificent now, fully restored to his ancient glory and beyond. His scales shifted through colors that had no human names, and his presence radiated such power and wisdom that even the most hardened diplomats were reduced to awed whispers in his presence. "Just thinking about how quickly things change," Maya replied, settling onto the bench she had installed specifically for their morning conversations. 6 months ago, you were dying of thirst. Now you're helping humanity redesign our terraforming technologies." Korath settled beside her, his massive form somehow managing to convey contentment despite his intimidating size. The speed of change is one of humanity's most remarkable traits. Most species require centuries to adapt their thinking to new realities. Humans seem to manage it in mere weeks. Maya smiled. "We've had to. We're a young species in a very big universe. If we didn't adapt quickly, we'd never survive." "And yet," Korath mused, "it is not merely adaptation. You could have solved our initial problem by simply providing me with enough water to regain basic health and then contacted your authorities. Instead, you chose to transform an entire world. That is not mere survival instinct, that is imagination combined with compassion on a scale I have never encountered in my travels across the galaxy." A soft chime indicated an incoming communication from Earth. Maya accepted the call, and Dr. Richardson's face appeared on her tablet screen. "Maya, I've got news from the Diplomatic Corps. The Galactic Council has agreed to meet with human representatives next month. They're calling it the most significant development in interstellar relations in over 1,000 years." Maya raised an eyebrow. "The Galactic Council? I thought most alien species were still in isolation following the consuming void crisis." "Apparently, word about what happened here has spread faster than we anticipated," Dr. Richardson explained. "Korath's story, combined with our terraforming success, has convinced several species to break their isolation. They want to know more about humans and our approach to problem solving." After the call ended, Maya turned to Korath. "You never mentioned a galactic council." "Because I believed it to be extinct," Korath admitted. The council was formed millennia ago as a forum for peaceful species to share knowledge and coordinate responses to galactic threats. But when the consuming void appeared, most species retreated into isolation and the council ceased to function. If they are reforming now, it means the galaxy is ready to start working together again, Maya finished. All because you survived and we found a way to help you. Korath's great eye focused on her with an intensity that still took Maya's breath away. No, Maya-Chen, not because I survived, but because of how humanity chose to help. Any species with sufficient technology could have provided me with water, but only humans looked at a dying dragon on a dead world and decided to transform both. A movement in the sky caught Maya's attention. 3 more ships were approaching. Sleek vessels of unfamiliar design that didn't match any human configuration she knew. Korath, are those Zephyrian vessels? Korath confirmed, his mental voice carrying emotions too complex for Maya to fully understand. My people, they have come. Maya felt her heart leap with excitement and break with sadness simultaneously. This was what Korath had been searching for across 5 centuries of loneliness, but it also meant he would be leaving. The ships landed gracefully on the platform, their hulls shifting color in patterns that reminded Maya of Korath's scales. Ramps extended and 3 dragons emerged, smaller than Korath but unmistakably of the same species. Their scales blazed with vibrant hues, and their eyes held the same ancient wisdom Maya had come to associate with her friend. The reunion was unlike anything Maya had ever witnessed. The dragons approached each other slowly, their scales flickering in complex patterns that she realized must be a form of communication. When they finally touched, pressing their great heads together, Maya felt a pulse of emotion so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. My cousins, Korath explained, his mental voice thick with joy, survivors from distant hibernation chambers. The energy signatures from our planetary network reached them across light years of space. They have been traveling for months to reach this world. One of the newcomers, whose scales shifted through shades of deep blue and silver, approached Maya. You are the human who saved our elder cousin from the long thirst? Maya nodded, suddenly feeling very small beside these magnificent beings. I am Thessarian Stormcaller. The dragon continued. We have heard the tale of your kindness and ingenuity. In the name of all surviving Zephyrians, you have our eternal gratitude. There are others? Maya asked hopefully. 17 of us remain, said the 3rd dragon, whose scales gleamed like polished copper, scattered across the furthest reaches of the galaxy but alive. With the power of this world's network guiding us, we can gather them all. The Zephyrian people will not die out. Maya felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This was what she had hoped for. Not just saving one life, but preserving an entire species. What will you do now? She asked Korath. We will rebuild, Korath replied. This world you have helped me create will become our new home. A place where we can restore our civilization and share our knowledge with other species. But Maya, the dragon paused, his ancient eyes focusing on her with deep affection. We have discussed this, my cousins and I. We do not wish to live in isolation as we did before. We want to be part of the greater galactic community, and we believe that community needs humanity's perspective. Thessarian stepped forward. We propose an alliance, Maya-Chen. Humans and Zephyrians working together. Your innovation and adaptability combined with our knowledge and abilities. Together we could help other species, restore dead worlds, even develop defenses against threats like the consuming void should it ever return. Maya looked around at the transformed world they stood on, a testament to what could be accomplished when different species work together with trust and mutual respect. She thought about the Galactic Council reforming, about other species emerging from isolation, about the possibilities that lay ahead. I think, she said slowly, that's the best idea I've heard since I decided to give water to a dying dragon. Korath's laugh rumbled through their minds, warm and joyful. Then let us begin, dear friend. The galaxy has been quiet for too long. It is time to show the stars what wonders can be, accomplished when the universe's youngest species teaches its oldest that sometimes the impossible is just another Tuesday waiting to happen. As the 3 suns set over their new world, painting the sky in brilliant shades of hope, Maya smiled and began planning humanity's next impossible project. After all, they had a galaxy to explore, species to help, and worlds to transform. The age of human Zephyrian cooperation was just beginning. And Maya Chen, who had once been the youngest xenobiologist in human space, was ready to show the universe that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected friendships. In the distance, the first Zephyrian eggs in over 2,000 years were beginning to form in nests, built from crystalline formations and human technology, a perfect symbol of what could be achieved when different species chose to build something beautiful together, rather than simply survive alone. The dying dragon had found his people, the desert world had found its rain, and humanity had found its place among the stars.